Apropos what I said earlier, it can do, and I think that economics more and more is beginning to focus on these things. But let's take a couple of them, for example, right? So let's talk about the contrast between the old and the new on this. For a very long time, the go-to answer from the entire profession on climate change was carbon tax, carbon tax, carbon tax. And as a sort of a technical solution, a sort of Pigovian tax on this would, yeah, totally makes sense. Get it. Great. Wonderful. Why has it happened then? Well, and then basically everyone gets embarrassed and walks out of the room. And the reason is politics. Because for it to actually matter, it would have to be levied in such a way it would make those sectors extinct. Now, in a way, that's kind of what has to happen, and it's a very blunt weapon for doing that. There are other ways of getting there. But the fact that we don't think of it that way, we think of it as something akin to basically a VAT tax or a sin tax or maybe some kind of pollution tax. It's just completely inadequate for the task at hand, unfortunately, because if that's your main policy tool, you're going to have to do it at such a level that it just basically destroys the thing you're trying to regulate. And then basically economics doesn't have an answer, right? It just doesn't have an answer. Well, other economics and other economists do have answers to that, which is basically things like, hey, we seem to be in this environment that Sebastian Mallaby recently called magic money land, because people are willing to lend us trillions of dollars as states at a negative real rate, which we can lock in for 20 years. Why don't we just use that and just decarbonize society through massive investments? Yeah, well, that's still an economic argument, right? So basically, it depends. The sort of the old standard school that we've been criticizing of structural reform, supply side dominance, monetary dominance, everything that we've grown up with, that is changing. And it's changing because the world has changed. And it's also changing because economists have changed. And they're beginning to realize the limitations of looking at the world in this way. We don't live in that world anymore. And in a sense, our economics have got to change and catch up with the world that we live in and the world that we're going to have to live in going forward. Can it work with race and class? Yes, absolutely it can. I mean, if you think about Mirza Bahadran's book, The Color of Money, just a brilliant sort of, expose of the systematic exclusion of African Americans from finance in the United States. It's an economic argument, right? And good economic arguments that point out not just injustices, kind of blind spots in our logic are incredibly important weapons in the arsenal of reform and stability. So again, I think that economics can do a fantastic job. Whether it has done a fantastic job is a different question.